My name is Eric Allen. I am the state director for Governor Pawlenty. I'm also the majority whip in the House. So the first thing I have to lead off by saying is, I think Dan Mulbauer is a great man, but you didn't give me somebody to replace Robert Roberts, so I have to complain a little bit. Maybe we can get Trish Roberts to run next time. So I want to thank you all for coming out today, sharing a lunch with us. I'm the state director for Governor Pawlenty. I've been running around the state with him. We're going corner to corner, county by county, going around meeting islands just like you, everywhere we go, having breakfast, coffee. We've probably eaten more food in the last 100 days than I should in the next 100 years. But it's been a great trip so far, and we've met hundreds of thousands, well, not hundreds of thousands yet. We've met thousands of islands, and everywhere we go, we've had a positive reception. We're building momentum. We're getting ready for the straw poll here in less than 3 weeks. I hope you come out and join us with that. But I want to thank you all for coming today and introduce Adam, who is a city councilman here, and he doesn't know it yet, but I'm going to twist his arm until he agrees to be a county chair or supporter. And we want to thank you for coming out. So, Adam.
I have the privilege of introducing Governor Pawlenty's wife, Mary. Mary has started out as an attorney. She was a district court judge and spent, of course, 8 years as the first lady of Minnesota. So we'd like to welcome Mary.
What's up with women and their purses? I can't go anywhere without having a purse like you have to. I'm going to set this down while I introduce my husband. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate it very much. I know Tim does as well, and I will try to be as brief as I possibly can be because I know you want to hear from him not only on his policies, but be able to ask questions that are specific and that perhaps are particularly of interest to you. Tim and I met back in the fall of 1983. We were friends for a while and have now been married almost 24 years. We were married in 1987. Do I have my math on that right? You know, we keep telling people that, I guess, you know, after a while, it's, you know, we've been married a very, very long time. Anyhow, I obviously have lived and breathed and done life with this person and know him well. I have seen him in good times and challenging times, and joy and sorrow, and like those of you who have been married a long time, you just know your spouse to the core. But whether you're talking to me or people who are longtime friends of Tim's or his family, you would find that we all would tell you the same thing, that he is a remarkable person whose roots go down deep. He is like a solid oak. He is a person of integrity. He has the courage of his convictions. I have seen him not only as a husband and as a father. By the way, we have 2 teenage daughters. We have Anna and Mara. Anna is with us today. Anna, give a little wave over there. She's our 18-year-old. She came with us on the road this week, but Mara's back in Minnesota. But I've seen him in those roles. I've also obviously seen him throughout the course of his political career. Once upon a time when he was on city council, and then 10 years in the legislature, a couple of which he was the majority leader. If you can imagine, for a period of time, the House of Representatives in Minnesota actually had a majority of Republicans. That's somewhat rare. But then, of course, his 2 terms as governor. And so I have seen him in fierce battles with the Democrats, and times when I have been thinking, I don't know how he's going to manage this particular battle. How is he going to be able to manage this particular conflict with these folks? But every single time he has dug in his heels, he has stuck to conservative principles. He is the kind of person who doesn't waver. So I will tell you that from my heart and also from my head. This is a man who has the wisdom and the judgment, the character, the experience, and truly is, in my humble opinion, the very, very best candidate for President of the United States. So ladies and gentlemen, my husband, Governor Tim Pawlenty.
Well, good afternoon. Thanks for coming by the Pizza Ranch to have a little lunch with us and learn about our campaign and my vision for America. I'm really excited and delighted that Mary is with me on this trip. She was with us last week in Iowa and this week a bit, and I know she'll be on many future trips to this state and other states as this campaign continues. But she brings a great joy and energy and positive attitude to our campaign. I love her very much. She's my best friend, and I'm so grateful for you, Heidi. Thank you for coming today. I really appreciate it. Well, I want to share with you, I love coming to Iowa for lots of different reasons, but one of the reasons I like to come is because people, one of the few places in the country that still get the Ole and Lena jokes. And so, right? So I got a few for you, and later on I'll give you some other ones. But you probably heard that Ole and Lena were having some tough times in the relationship. They were bickering, they were arguing back and forth, and Ole had really kind of reached the breaking point, so he decided to go see a counselor. And he goes to see the counselor, and he says, you know, the situation with Lena is deteriorating. I mean, we're arguing all the time. There's a lot of bickering back and forth. And the counselor says, oh, Ole, my goodness, I can fix that. No problem. All you need to do is clear your head and get some exercise. You just get out there every day for 2 weeks, and you walk 2 miles every day for 14 days, and you'll be fine. And I'll check in with you. So Ole says, okay, I will. And he leaves the office. 2 weeks go by, and the counselor picks up his phone, and he calls Ole. Catches him on his cell phone. He says, Ole, how you doing? How's the relationship with Lena? Is it improving? And Ole says, well, how would I know? I'm 28 miles away from our house. So I just share that with you because as a nation, we are drifting away from those things that we know matter most, that we know have worked so well and served our nation so well over these many decades and many generations and made us the greatest nation the world has ever known. And like you, I love this country. And I'm running for President of the United States because I've got the leadership and the experience and the strength and the results and the ideas to lead this country to a better place. Before we talk about the way forward, though, I think it's instructive to step back and reflect upon how we got into this mess. And there's a lot of different reasons for it, but let me give you some of the most recent and most important. One of the ways we got into the mess is we recently, not we, but the Democrats and some others, elected as President of the United States somebody who is not prepared or equipped to be President of the United States. Barack Obama had been a community organizer. He had been a college professor. He had been somebody who was in the United States Senate long enough to have a cup of coffee before it got cold. And then the country put him in the Oval Office and made him President of the United States and leader of the free world and Commander-in-Chief. And he wasn't ready for the job. And I think Iowa should expect, and America should expect, that the next President of the United States is going to have executive experience, having run something large with a public component to it, led it and driven it to results. That's the kind of experience we need and steady hand you're going to need in these most historically challenging times for our country and certainly for the Oval Office. Two is, we learned some things about the value of other things. I mean, he came through town like an elixir salesman. Was given these great speeches. He was given this soaring rhetoric, all these fancy words, big promises. And now we realize it was all hollow. It was all a head thing. And you look at what he said to America, those big promises, they've almost all have been unfulfilled or broken. Now I won't go through them all, but let me give you a few examples. He stood here in Iowa on the night of the 2008 caucuses, and he said, you know, we have to fix the health care system. And he promised that he would do it with Republicans. He promised he would focus on cost containment. As a candidate, he was against the individual mandate. Then he went to Washington, D.C. and jammed down the throats of the country one of the most liberal, partisan, misguided pieces of legislation in the modern history of the country. My friends, Obamacare should be repealed in its entirety. It's a bad bill. And then he did some other things. He got elected president. A few months into his presidency, he looked the American people in the eye and he said, you know what? I'm going to cut the deficit in half during my first term. Cut the deficit in half during his first term. He didn't cut the deficit in half. He tripled it. He tripled it. And then he says, and there's many, many other examples, but I'll give you just one more. The economy's in trouble. Then he concocts this idea of a stimulus bill, which he says was going to ignite the economy. Mostly turned out to be a big pork-filled waste of money. And he said, if you don't pass the stimulus bill, unemployment could go as high as, remember? 8%. Now it went up to 10%. Still at 9%, by the way. So he's been there 3 years. He's had his chance. It's not working. What Barack Obama doesn't understand is that central planning doesn't work. Freedom and free enterprise and free markets work. And we need to unleash the American spirit. We need to unleash that again in this country. But to have a new and better direction for America, we're going to need a new and better president. So here's some of the things I want to share with you, and we'll leave the rest of the time for questions. Number one, we got to get this economy moving again. And I travel this country 6 days a week, and I talk to business people and entrepreneurs and the like, and they all say the same thing. Small businesses, medium-sized businesses, people who like to start businesses, large businesses, they say, Governor, you know, it's not that difficult, it's not that complex. If you want this economy to grow, you want businesses to start and grow and provide jobs, here's what you got to do. Get the government off my back. That's what they say. It's not rocket science. Some talk about taxes, some talk about regulation, some talk about the crushing costs of health care, some talk about the crushing costs of litigation, some talk about incredibly increasing energy prices and what that means for their business and their family, and on down the list. And so they say, make the load lighter, not heavier. Do things to encourage me, not discourage me. Do things to give me confidence that the future is going to be brighter and stable, not dimmer and unstable. And so there's a lot under the hood of that, but know that I gave the most specific, the most concrete, the most aggressive, bold, pro-growth, pro-jobs, pro-investment plan and proposal of any candidate in the race by far, including the president, at the University of Chicago a few weeks ago. The whole speech is on my website, but the highlights are, take that corporate tax rate from one of the highest in the world to one of the most competitive in the world, and clean out all, or as many as possible, the special exemptions and credits and deductions, so we don't have cronyism in the tax code. We don't have politicians playing favorites with their special, or more favorite friends and buddies in the system. Everybody gets a fair and flat tax in the business tax side. On the individual side, shrink the rates from 6 to 2. Do regulation reform so our regulations are lighter and more pro-job and more pro-investment. Have an energy policy that can be summarized in 3 words. More American energy. So we unhook ourselves from places and people that don't like us, that want to present a threat to our security or to our economy. And then do healthcare reform the right way. Like I did in Minnesota, no mandates, no individual mandates, no government takeovers, using market forces to get this system under control and to get the prices more affordable for people who need it, and down the list. And of course we tackled spending big and hard in that speech as well, big time, and down the list. The spending issue, as you know, is right in the forefront of the newspapers and the news these days, mostly because of the debt ceiling vote. You should know that the debt ceiling is really a symptom. It's not really the underlying problem. So if I came to you, sir, and you had an elevated temperature for a day, you might ignore it for a day, hoping it just was going to come and go, a minor thing. But if you had a high temperature for many days or weeks in a row, I don't think your doctor would just give you an aspirin and say good luck. You know, we want to know what's the underlying problem. And so the debt ceiling is like a warning sign, or a high elevated temperature. We can't just talk about the debt ceiling. We have to talk about what's the underlying problem. We have to lift up the hood and really fix the problem. Now, I don't believe anymore, and I don't think you do either, that we can just send politicians to Washington, D.C. and trust that they're going to do the right thing financially for our country. I believe it's time to put up some invisible fencing or some guardrails around them, because I don't think they can control themselves, most of them. So I think it's way past the time for us to demand, to propose, and to pass into law, like 49 of the 50 states have. We need a constitutional amendment to balance the federal budget and force these Washington, D.C. politicians to balance the books. That's the only way we're going to get this mess cleaned up. That's in the long term. But in the short term, we got some other work to do. The other work to do is we got to make sure we start the process of getting this spending under control. Now look, every Republican is going to stand before you that's running for president, or many of them will, and they'll say many of the same things. They're going to say, I'm the one who can reduce the spending. I'm the one who will reduce taxes. They'll say, I'm for school reform that empowers parents and focuses on local control. They'll say, I'm the one who will do healthcare reform the right way. They'll say, I'm for appointing conservative justices. They'll say they're pro-life. They'll say they're for traditional marriage. They'll say they're for public employee compensation reform, and on down the list. I think an important question for you will be, many of these candidates sound the same, so what's really the difference? What should you be looking for in a candidate that you might support at the Ames straw poll or the Iowa caucuses? Well, I hope one of the things that you'll consider is this. Have they actually done any of it? Because I've had enough of politicians, including Barack Obama, shooting their mouths off and making these big promises, soaring rhetoric and big speeches while the country's drowning in debt and deficit and other problems. So this isn't a time for more speeches. It's not a time for more rhetoric. It's a time for leaders to step forward and roll up their sleeves and put their head down and their shoulders back and plow ahead and solve the problems facing this nation. And that's going to take leaders who don't just talk about it. It's going to take leaders who've actually done it. And that's why we're driving around Iowa 1,100 miles last week and about the same coming up here with this theme, road to results. Not road to more rhetoric, road to results. Anybody can stand up here and flap their jaw and tell you the right things like a bobblehead doll, with words coming out of their mouth, and give you the Republican script. That doesn't take much talent at all. What we need as a country is leaders who have the fortitude, the courage, the experience, the judgment, the seasoning, the strength to actually get this stuff done. I have, and I hope that you'll consider that as you consider your vote. Number two, people are all going to say, look, I'm the one who can go win in blue places and purple places that are necessary to win the election. And that's really important, because if you look at Barack Obama's numbers nationally, they're not very good. And if you look at Barack Obama's numbers amongst independent voters in swing states that are actually going to decide the election, places like Iowa and Wisconsin and Ohio and some others, his numbers are terrible. And the main way we're going to goof this up as Republicans is to nominate the wrong candidate. And we nominate somebody that the rest of the party or the rest of the country says, I don't think so. We're going to be off on the wrong journey. And so before you fuel the rocket up here in Iowa and launch somebody towards the goal is defeating Barack Obama. Make sure the rocket can get all the way there. Because it's not much of a consolation prize for Iowa to have somebody who's right in that moment or exciting for the day, but really can't be the nominee of the party. Really can't beat Barack Obama in those swing states with swing voters, and really can't be the President of the United States in the most historic, challenging of times, and all that implies in terms of the experience that goes with the job. So I hope you'll consider all of those things as you consider your vote. I want to make sure we ask for your support and your help. We've got a big event coming up at Ames on August 13th. If you haven't signed up yet, I hope you will on our website, or see one of the folks with postcards on the way out today. Who Iowa gives a little momentum to in these early months, either now or in the caucuses next February, is going to have a lot to say about who our party's nominee is. I think if you really kick the tires, you'll see in Minnesota, I took spending from historic highs to historic lows. I cut taxes net during my time as governor, even though we had the effects of 2 recessions during those 8 years. We were one of the first states in the country to offer and present performance pay for teachers rather than just seniority pay. We did public employee compensation reform before it was cool and popular to do it. We started it years ago. I did healthcare reform the right way in Minnesota. No individual mandates, no government takeovers. We did welfare reform, we did immigration reform, and on down the list. So you can go check it out. The Cato Institute, which is one of the toughest grading libertarian conservative think tanks in the country, gave precisely 4 governors an A grade. The other 3 aren't running for president. The other 3 aren't even thinking about running for president. They're from Louisiana, South Carolina, and West Virginia. So if you believe the proof is in the pudding, we've got the proof. And I want to make sure that we share that with you today. This is a great country. It will remain so if it's properly led, and those of us in the room who know what made this country great are willing to stand up and fight for it. And we're a great country not because we're the biggest country in population. We're not. We're a great country not because we're the cheapest country. We're not. Although we need to be dramatically more competitive in terms of our cost. We're the greatest country the world has ever known, and will remain so because we're the freest country. And for those of us who know that when government comes into our lives, It makes it more expensive, more difficult, slower, more discouraging, heavier, or worse yet, takes over more and more of what was the province of families or private markets or entrepreneurs. They not only grow their budgets, they not only run the numbers up through the roof as you're seeing now, they do something else. They weigh down and discourage the American spirit. And you know that's happening. If you spend time around Iowa and in the country, you see we got a lot of people who are discouraged and worried about the future. And they need to know that this is going to be about a bright future, a confident America, a strong America, not because of rhetoric and words, but because of results. And the leaders who are able to deliver it, and the people who understand the brilliance of this country isn't in our bureaucracy, it's in our people. And we need to de-emphasize and reduce the bureaucracy and unleash that dynamic free spirit of the American people. That's how we're going to stay great. So thanks for coming today. I look forward to your questions, and I appreciate you taking the time to be with us, and I hope you'll come to Ames and support the campaign. Thank you very much.